Hello, and welcome back to the Save Ourselves podcast. I am your host Aparna, and this is episode 2. So, today we are going to be unpacking the question, why is it so hard to have a normal, consistent routine? And I think consistent and routine can be pretty synonymous. But what I mean is that, sometimes we have this idea of a routine set in our minds, let's say a morning routine or a post, like after work routine or a night routine, something like that. But it's not something that we consistently show up to at the frequency that we've, maybe set for ourselves, or at least the consistency that we need for those routines to be cemented in our lives. And I think that's a struggle that I'm facing at the moment, or this has been something I've been wondering about for the past few weeks. And I just wanted to see if I'm alone in this struggle or if there are other people who find this a little bit relatable. So let me know what you think in the comments below, and we can chat about it and we can figure it out together. So, coming back to the question of why is it so hard to have a normal, consistent routine? And I think maybe it's because we are baby adults. Like, if you're, for example, in your 20s, like me, then you are a baby adult, someone who's new to the whole game and who's still trying to figure everything out. And we just need a little bit of time, to figure out what works for us, what doesn't work. And I think simultaneously, as we are figuring out, we are also living our life. So it's like we don't know what works out for us yet. We are trying things while we're also trying to figure out what we actually want out of those things. So maybe there's a clash in that a little bit, and that's why it's so hard to be consistent with everything all the time. But I just feel like it's a constant struggle where you have a lot of things to juggle at the same time. Like, for example, you need to be consistent with work because of course that's your bread and butter. You want to show up to it, you want to put in your effort, you want to get ahead in your career. So it's something that you are going to prioritize and something that you're showing up for every day or like every working day. And then you have your personal things to handle, like you have your friendships, your relationships that you're trying to nurture. You have your physical fitness, mental fitness that you are trying to keep up with or improve on, or at least just keep consistent at it, or just keep it at the level it is right now, at least maintain it. That's the least you're doing, or you're trying to improve on it, like I am, for instance. So that's something you need to put your effort into. Maybe your family life, that's something you need to put your effort into because they are the people who you're spending your time with. If you're living with your roommates, then those are the people, or like whatever your home situation is, you have to put attention to that. Then take your actual physical living environment to maintain it, to keep it clean, to keep it functional. That's somewhere you need to invest your energy into. Speaking of investing, finances is something you need to actively look at, like what's the status, like where are you currently. I feel like we're constantly trying to figure all of these aspects out, and while we don't necessarily get the answers for them right away, I feel like all of these things, all of these aspects in our life, to handle them simultaneously is like a constant struggle. And it's not necessarily a negative struggle. I think there's some sort of um, maybe it's a good struggle that we all have to go through, and that's how we figure out the adulting life a little better in our 30s and our 40s. And the only way is through, right? So I think it's a struggle that is like a rite of passage almost, and we all have to go through. But like being in this struggle, it just feels so overwhelming to keep up with all of these aspects of our lives, all this, like all the time. So it's so hard to in a day focus on working out, focus on eating well, focus on showing up to work and giving it your best, or at least the best for that day. Then figuring out like what you want to do, like what your interactions look like for that day. Are you meeting up with anyone? Are you talking to your friends or your family? Or just do you have any time left for your hobbies? Is there anything else that you want to do? Are there any chores that need attention? So I think just figuring all of this out day after day for a very elongated period of time, I feel that's like that thought almost baffles me, and it's kind of, I'm not even sure if I have a word to describe, but I feel, yeah, like it's kind of baffling, to be honest, and a little mind blowing. Like, how are we expected to just keep up with everything all the time? And what I'm realizing is maybe that my perspective of, figuring out everything all the time is a little rigid, and I need to be a little more flexible with it. So I think that's the direction that I want to take for this podcast episode as well. And if you are also struggling with this, then maybe we find a few solutions for it, or at least a few strategies that we can experiment with, and maybe a solution pops out. Let's hope. So I think that I am being a little rigid with this mindset, or maybe I'm just conditioned to, think that we have to keep up with every single thing all the time. But it's not possible, right? Like, we're human. We have our own limitations. There's only so many things that I can do in a day. So maybe I need to look at my days or even months or weeks in terms of themes, and not something that's a rigid set routine that I have to follow every single day. Like, my Monday to Friday does not have to look the exact same. My Monday can differ from my Tuesday, which can differ from my Wednesday, and that's completely fine. Even though all of, like, Monday to Friday is supposed to be my work week, the actual day to day can differ, and that's all right. So I think just finding a little bit of flexibility in all of this might help me be a little more flexible with my attitude towards all of this. And that's something that I'm trying to do, of, letting go of the rigidity and trying to approach my days with a little more flexibility, and like uh, taking it day by day, and also taking it creatively. Like, it's a new challenge for that day as to figure out what I want to prioritize and how the day will end up looking like. So I think something that helps me is starting the day off with a game plan. And a lot of the times, I think I'm able to get through my to do list more or less, but there are some days when you might not be able to, or the day that you envisioned is not the day you end up having, and that's okay. So I think more than like a very strict to do list or things to check off, I think having like a game plan sounds better. Like, for instance, just having a few non-negotiables for the day, and whatever extra you can get done, just put it down on your list. So if you get them done, then brownie points for you. But if not, then it's all right. It can happen tomorrow. Just make sure that those tasks are actually, negotiable, and don't put your non-negotiables in your it can happen tomorrow list. So maybe just being a little strategic about it, and taking some time in the morning to actually plan out your day and just visualize of what this could potentially look like. And I think one of the factors that we often forget to consider in this is our energy levels for the day. And I'm not just talking about physical energy, because although that's important too, because it does differ from day to day based on what you have been doing, how your health looks like, how your overall, I think the phase of life that you are in, your physical health is going to differ. Similarly, your mental energy is also going to differ. Maybe your battery life is going to change, if I want to, put it in that term. So every day your battery life might look different. So I think just taking that into consideration while you're planning out your day can just help us be more aligned with what we want out of the day, and just make the plan aligned with that and in sync with that. I think it'll just bridge the gap between our vision and the reality, and that's always great to have. I think when things go according to your plans or go as per your plans, that's always a nice feeling to have. Another thing that has been helping me is separating my week and the weekend. I think this is where I find myself to be the most consistent when basically I have a good weekend. And by a good weekend, I mean that I do like varied things. I live a calendar free weekend. So if you know me or if you don't know me, the thing about me is that I'll put everything down on my Google Calendar, whether it be work, whether it be things outside of work, and I'll put them like basically my Monday to Friday will be like a very colorful, visualization on my Google Calendar, and you'll be able to see what my day looks like from Monday to Friday. But and most of the times this is pre-planned. Like I always put things before they happen on the Google Calendar so that I know what my day is going to look like. But what I'm trying out for a few weeks now is to live my weekends free of the calendar. I might go in on a Sunday night and put the things that I did, but I'll just fill the calendar in retrospect. It's not something that I would have planned. And I think that's working out for me so much better because then I'm able to take the weekend in a spontaneous direction, do something that just might pop up in my mind, and it'll, just boost my excitement levels and my happiness levels by a lot more, and it'll make me feel much more satisfied with the kind of weekend that I had. And when that happens, I feel like I'm much more rejuvenated to get started with a new week, and I'm able to like hit the ground running on Monday morning. But there have been times when I'll just completely dissociate for the weekend. Maybe it's been a hectic week or whatever, but I'll just be horizontal for most of the weekend, not really doing anything, doom scrolling, or just having too much screen time. And while it may look like rest, I don't think it recharges me that way, or at least not in this phase of life. I think there are times when you actually need that rest, and it's great to have that. But right now, I'm finding my active weekends to be a lot more fruitful than like horizontal sloth weekends. So that's what I'm trying to do, having active weekends that are free of the calendar and living in a totally opposite way than the way that I would live my week. Because, like I said, my weeks will be pre planned. I'll have an idea of what my week, like at least my Monday to Friday, looks like. I'll have all my plans with work and outside of work kind of made already, and I'll have at least like a brief outline or at least a basic chalked out plan for the week in place. Of course, things will change around, but at least I have an idea going into the week. Whereas for the weekend, most of the times I'm pretty clueless, and that's been one of the greatest things that I've been noticing. It's made a huge difference in my life. Another thing that I think has been helping me is embracing the changes that come with a little bit of curiosity. So, for example, like I said, it's a constant struggle to keep up with everything all at once. So, when there are times that challenge me and I'm not able to do this, I'm just trying to think of how can I, take on this challenge? What can I do to make this better? And if there's a time, for instance, when I'm going to be drowning in work, I'll maybe try and see that as a challenge that I can accomplish and then move on. And maybe in the phase that comes next, my work will take a little bit of backseat. And then the challenge is to prioritize everything else that had been the backseat when I was drowning in work. So I think thinking of when I say, I want to adopt a more flexible mindset, it's this as well. Like being less rigid about doing everything every single day. Like, for example, if one of my priorities is like making time for my hobbies, one of them being reading. So, for example, I may not have time to read every single day, and being in this rigid mindset, I make myself feel bad about it. Like, why am I not reading every day when it's so important to me? But the thing is that after work or even before work at times, when work is my priority, I might not have the energy, the time, or the bandwidth, or all of the above every single day, and that's okay. So maybe I can find a balance where I'm trying to push myself a little bit and be consistent with what I am, telling to myself or the promises that I'm making to myself, but also letting things be a little flexible where it's like, okay, I don't have time to read on Mondays because it's the beginning of the week. I have to figure out everything for my clients. I have to figure out what my week is going to look like. So Mondays end up being a little crazy, and that's fine. I won't read on Mondays if the time or my energy doesn't allow me to. But I'll maybe carve out more time nearing the weekend where maybe my Thursdays and Fridays are a little bit lighter. So I'll read for a whole hour instead of just half an hour. And that way, it's like the week doesn't have to look, like I said at the beginning, my Monday can look different than my Tuesday, and that's completely okay. I think it's even refreshing to have it that way. Maybe what I'm realizing out loud is that it's not like we are not able to have these consistent routines because they might end up lead to monotony or even be boring after a point. Like maybe it's actively like designed like that. Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. Like I think it's great to not have these very consistent routines because there's something new to look forward to every day, and there are these new adventures that we can go on, and maybe there are times when we actually need a little bit of consistency and need those routines, but having just a few of those blocks in place and being flexible about the rest of it is like a great balance to have, where for instance for most of us our work, like at least timings or something, can be pretty fixed, or at least there'll be something in your life that's pretty fixed. The least being, at least your sleep schedule is fixed, or the times that you take your meals is fixed, and I hope it is because it's pretty necessary. So even having these chunks of times, just being blocked out either mentally or on your calendar or something, and then figuring out the rest of the day, day by day, I think that's a pretty great adventure to go on. So I think the answer to the question of like why is it so hard to have normal consistent routines is because they might not even be as necessary as I'm deeming them to be. It might make more sense for people to have a little bit of um, vibrancy or like dynamism in their days, and just to have things a little bit more spontaneous and leave room for the unknown. I think that's a great angle to take. And before this podcast gets too long and boring for you, I'm going to conclude on this note that maybe, just maybe, if you've been too hard on yourself for not being very, very consistent with everything that you're doing, maybe there's a reason. Maybe you don't thrive on those routines, and maybe you could leave a room for a little bit of flexibility. And okay, one of the last things I'm going to say before I leave is that the problem with not having this consistency is that it kind of makes you question the bigger picture. Like you're not able to track your progress if you're not doing something every single day. I think that's one of the reasons why it bugs me also. So I think in those times, regular sort of reflection or having these, checkpoints in between, maybe it's a monthly check-in or a weekly check-in or a fortnightly check-in, whatever works for you. I think just looking back at these checkpoints and looking back on what your week or your month has been like, that can give you a better idea of where you are headed and any kind of tweaks that you may need to make. But it does not mean that you need to do every single thing every single day. And you can take things day by day and live in these themes or have these themed days or weeks where one thing takes a bit more priority than the others. And that's totally fine. So, like I said, if you are not able to be super consistent with things, despite trying and being too hard on yourself, maybe, just maybe question if you even need that at all or if you even thrive on that. Maybe flexibility and living your life a bit more creatively is what you actually thrive on. At least it's what I'm realizing that I might be thriving on. That's the reason I decided to be a freelancer, is because I love the flexibility that comes with it. So why am I trying so hard to remove that flexibility from my routines? Something to think about. All right, so that's what I'm going to leave you with, and I'll catch up with you in the next episode. All right, I hope you have a good day and a week ahead. I'll see you next time with episode 3. Bye bye.